So I went into ChatGPT and I was like, tell me the top red pill content creators on YouTube. I can't even take this seriously. I went into ChatGPT and I asked it to tell me all of the red pill YouTube content creators. And it gave me a list, and I went through and I tried to pick and choose some of the YouTube videos that were published more recently under the red pill umbrella. And I thought that we could watch some of them just to get an idea of what is being told to these young men. Okay, because that is so important to me. Because again, I don't think that we can actively fight patriarchy and fight hierarchy and the religious systems of institutional control and even capitalism if we're not reaching every audience. So it's like, I know how to connect with feminists. I know how to connect with leftists now. I have full confidence in having any kind of conversation with people who are just like me, right? Well, I want us to be able to talk to these red pill content lovers, and again, kind of reach across the divide, because let's be so for real. The male loneliness epidemic is a real thing. I don't want to diminish that. Do I think it is a response? Do I think it is the result of patriarchy? Yeah. 100%. Because when men, especially young men, are it's enforced upon them that they can't be vulnerable, they can't share their emotions. They are having this emotional disconnect from a lot of the women who, according to patriarchy and traditional gender roles, women are told hey, you're not supposed to be in the workforce. You're supposed to stay at home and cook the food and be nurturing and the emotional caregiver and leave the providing of resources to the men in your life. That is what the traditional gender roles tell both men and women. However, because of the way society is working, because capitalism, we're in late stage capitalism, and it is starting to increase the wealth divide between the poorest people and the wealthiest people, and it is starting to disappear the middle class, because a single income household simply is no longer as feasible as it was even just 10 years ago, not to mention 50 or 60, because capitalism is eroding the freedoms of the everyday person to pull themselves up out of survival mode. That includes, yes, it includes men, but that includes women, right? So women have had to enter the workforce for a variety of reasons. Do not come at me and pretend like there is one single unified answer as to why women are in the workforce. But the reality is, women have had to come to terms with being their own provider of resources. They have had to do the work of climbing up in the patriarchal corporate cultures so that they can provide for themselves, all while still maintaining the emotional labor of themselves and, in most cases, the others around them. They are still doing the nurturing, emotional caregiving of their counterparts. Meanwhile, because again, patriarchy is still enforcing the lack of emotional vulnerability, which equates to the lack of emotional intelligence and growth in men, because patriarchy is telling them you have to be the sole provider, but sorry, capitalism won't let you be the sole provider, so now you don't have any value in the first place. So that shame is internalized, and men are widely turning deeper into fundamentalist Christianity. That's a very simplified way of putting it, but men are still being told they can't be vulnerable. They're still being told they have to be strong and tough and all of these things that patriarchy has been telling them for millennia. But what's happened is women have had to break out of their gender roles because of patriarchy and capitalism before men have had to break out of their gender roles that are the result of patriarchy. Capitalism has not yet required men to break out of their gender roles by being more emotionally vulnerable and growing emotionally and looking internally and building community outside of religion. So that can look like, interest-based activities, which is, I am not a sports girl at all, but I understand that sports culture is a great way for men to socialize and meet each other and build community outside of religion, which at the very least I can say is much better, even though football and a lot of sports kind of look like postmodern Coliseum type vibes to me, but none of my business. That's none of my business. I'm not here to hate on sports. Trump and Elon have such low emotional intelligence. Exactly. Hello, welcome, first time chatter. Yes, so hierarchy is a mode of valuation that relies on being above someone. You can't just have value by yourself. It's a precarious position. Yes, well said. And hierarchy is also vertical valuation in the sense that, again, valuation relies on being above someone or below someone. When what is really coming into play now with fighting against capitalism, patriarchy, religion is a horizontal approach to all of these issues. And that is going to be key here. A horizontal approach is the yes and mentality when you're having conversations with someone who's on the apparent opposing side of all of these conversations. So if me, a radical leftist feminist atheist, is having a conversation with a man who's a Christian conservative, I refuse to let that debate just turn into our ideologies pitting against each other and trying to dominate each other, because that is still a hierarchical approach to these issues. I am here to present and represent a horizontal approach. That is what class consciousness is, right? We are reaching across, on a very simplified level, party lines. We are reaching across these lines of gender and race and sexuality and all of these things to band together and say, hey, commonality between us is more important than the division that the ultra rich elites, which is like such a diluted term, but I'm going to use it in this sense anyway. They are trying to keep us divided. So can we please not play into that? And that is why I wanted to, and now I can't stop like chuckling at it. That is why I want to look at some of this red pill content, because again, I want to be able to work towards solving the male loneliness epidemic, which, by the way, some of us girls are lonely too, because we can't find emotionally mature partners. Okay. So there is just a general loneliness epidemic. I'm just going to say it.